right, we're live.
Is that on me?
Yep.
All right. Welcome back to the Freeborn Podcast. I am here, New Year 2021, and I'm with my first guest of the new year, for whatever that is worth, Bret Carpenter. And we are going to talk about all things election. He has his Trump 2020 virtue signaling going on, he says.
Lock him up. Lock him up.
And I am virtue signaling my Christian hat, make Jesus king again. So.
Oh, well. You ruined my whole thing.
So Bret has been trolling me on Facebook and Twitter and I don't know, wherever else he can find me. He looks for me on all social media platforms he can find me on to troll me because he doesn't think I am pure enough in my ideology. So he is here to correct me, to straighten me out, to set me straight.
Well, someone has to.
That's what Terry says. She's very happy about this. She's in your camp by no doubt.
Yeah. Well, when you called me, because I think you're trolling me, you just called me and said, "What evidence?" That's the first thing you said. What evidence? Well, it's not just you. It's a whole lot of Christian speakers who I really like seem to be so impartial. They're so even-handed. It's like they need to pick sides. You know what I mean? When I first heard you preaching, you were black and white. You didn't give the other side, the time of day. You just shut them down. And now you're so, okay, well, let's listen to his side. And I say, oh, no.
So you'd rather me be the old Michael?
Yeah, you're the old Michael to me. But I'm the old Michael to everyone else.
The old Michael to you. I'm so sure.
Yeah, all right.
Well, you just keep putting
me up to shut me down.
No, I did not. I called you up because I am very open to evidence. I think that the American electoral system is one of the worst ever designed. I shouldn't say design. I don't know that the design is bad, but it certainly has not kept up with the developments of electoral processes and electoral fraud. And so I think that there's just tremendous possibility for fraud in our system. Okay. I mean, like, basically anyone could steal the election if they had sufficient resources.
And they did.
I'm not saying that. So, no, I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying I have not seen any evidence at all that holds up to scrutiny. Just a lot of claims.
Well, wait a second.
I think you're the four.
Here's the problem, and this is a problem. What evidence do you have that the Earth revolves around the sun? See, I go outside, and it looks to me like the sun revolves around the Earth.
Okay.
Well, so if I ask you, what evidence do you have? Well, you have to just cite some expert. Well, all of them say this. And I'm going to say, but wait a second. Look. How do you know? This is my problem. I post on Facebook, here's evidence for fraud. And then there's a little caption below it that says, this is not true. Our experts have decided this isn't true. And when you look at it, it's like, well, who do you believe? How can you know? How can I know absolutely if this fraud is true or not? I just want to know, is it possible?
I would think it would be possible to know whether or not a fraud claim is true. That is the amazing thing about how God set up the whole truth. Let's call it the whole truth structure, in that it's not always, it's very difficult to ascertain truth, but it's very easy to verify truth. So not anybody, probably, a half a dozen people in the world, let's say, could figure out the general theory of relativity. But hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people can actually test it and determine whether it works or doesn't work, or whether it's how truthful or how accurate it is.
Well, wait a second.
And that's how truth works.
Yeah, well, okay. The way I approach it is kind of like that. But there aren't a whole lot of people who can understand the theory of relativity and actually know whether this is true or not. I can't. I haven't.
Well, I didn't say billions. I said maybe millions.
But then it still comes down. Most people are going to have to take somebody's word for it.
Yes, but there's a range of what you can ascertain within your ability to understand things.
Well, this is what I think I'm doing with this fraud. And this is why I told you the other day, I have just a very common sense approach. There's just some things to me that just ring true. And they're almost always true because it's just good reasoning.
Well, I believe, and I've said this for a long time, that reasoning tells me that the Democrats would be unconscionable had they not committed fraud, given their underlying underlying convictions. So they believe Trump is fascist Hitler. Well, if I believe that somebody was actually Hitler, then I would do anything possible to keep Hitler from coming in, to staying in power. Anything at all is God's work.
Okay.
So it's not even quote unquote fraud. I mean, if you're living in 1930 Germany and you could know what we know now and say, you know what, we got to keep this guy from coming into power, and putting in Antifa or any other type of anti-brown shirt paramilitary force into the country, and if you could go in and stuff the ballot boxes, anything you could do, you'd be saving millions and millions of lives. That would not be considered doing anything wrong.
Well, then Trump should not leave office by any means.
Well, that would be the side. That would be the other side, right? That would be the always Trumpers would believe they're doing God's work also.
Now, I'm pretty sure we're the good guys. I'm pretty sure that if you put the Republicans and Democrats side by side, I'm pretty sure that we're on the right side. I don't think everything is right about the Republican platform, but the Democrat platform is just horrendous.
Well, I would agree. I agree that the Democrat platform is basically taking Romans 1 and Romans 2 and Romans 3 and implementing it as politics.
Right. So even if I'm wrong on my stance that there is all this fraud, I'm naively, innocently on the right side. I'm actually committing fraud by falsely claiming fraud, but unknowingly, because I actually think there was.
But see, I'm
pretty sure.
Go ahead.
Huh? No, well, I'm just saying. I'm pretty sure that they think they committed fraud too.
I don't know about that. So here's the thing about that, though. That to me, part of the problem is that they're mixing stuff up. So when you say, I know there was fraud, there's fraud in every single election, everywhere in the world, every single one. The question is there sufficient fraud to make any difference at all? So 15 votes from a dead person in one precinct. Sure. Does that happen? Happens everywhere. And for a lot of reasons that aren't always that somebody's trying to commit fraud. There's a lot. Somebody sends in an absentee ballot and then dies before the actual election takes place, and that vote gets counted. That's electoral fraud, but it's not fraud with the intent to defraud. It's just right. So is there fraud in the election? Yes. Is there sufficient fraud that it actually changed the outcome of the election? That's the question.
Right. I just think it's undeniable.
How is it? It can't. It's not undeniable when I can't find any evidence to back up that claim.
Well, this is what I mean. What are you accepting as evidence? Because when I see a report come out, you know, when I see a congressman, like the other day I was watching, and Rand Paul is in Congress, and he's saying, well, yeah, there were 4,000 dead voters, and there were this many thousands of out-of-state voters, and then he says, yeah, this election was stolen in many ways from Trump. Now, is he making that up? Should I believe him, or is he just so partisan?
Well, see, I have a hard time.
Just...
I have a hard time believing any of the Republicans who want to run for president next year. So I basically don't take their word for it. So we're talking about Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Marco Rubio maybe, and any Republican who is in government right now who wants to run for president, they are all jockeying for Trump's supporters.
Right, but he's not making up these facts. He's receiving these.
Well, there's
he's just
a difference.
Repeating these. Well, let me just tell you this: is Rudy Giuliani making up all this stuff? Are all his witnesses just making this up?
No, I'm not saying I don't. Well, first of all, I don't know yes or no. I don't think they're making these things up. I think that they are over dramatizing many of them. I think they're overstating some of them. I think that I think they're conjuring up a few of them.
I think so too, but I'm going to just take it on the other side. But are they exaggerating them enough that the amount they're overstating it would change the excessive fraud that would overturn the election? No. Yeah, they're exaggerating. Yeah, there's a lot of fraud claims that aren't true, but I think there's sufficient evidence, at least, that there are potentially enough votes to overturn the election if these fraudulent votes went for Trump. I think there are possibly millions of potential fraudulent votes.
Oh, I think there's possibly millions also. The problem is I can't find evidence to any significant number of them.
Well, this is the thing. It comes down to what you think is reasonable evidence. Now,
well, I think I think reasonable evidence would have to be verified by some type of objective observers, or even semi-objective observers on either side. I'm fine with leans right, leans left, but semi-objective observers who would come out and explain to me, not say yes, we saw it, trust me. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, come out and lay out. Hold on, a semi-objective observer who could lay out the case and the data, give me raw data, and say, here's how you can look at this and verify it. And if I could find that, and they would show that for any significant number of fraud, I would be more likely to accept all the claims of fraud.
Right, and it's pretty hard when you're trying to take your evidence to a semi-objective observer, and you can't find any, and the ones you find just outright reject it. We don't want to look at this, and they come up with some technicality. Oh, you don't have standing. We don't want to have any part of this.
No,
you filed your claim too late.
No, you're mixing in the judicial system with people who I would accept as. I'm talking about me, not the country. I'm not saying that. Okay. I'm not saying what would happen to overturn a vote or overturn the electoral process or the electoral counting or certifications. I'm talking about what I personally would accept, and there's plenty. I have found a lot of objective observers willing to dig through the data, present it out, and offer up all their tools, all their software and mathematical tools for anybody to take a look at the data and see that the fraud claim doesn't bear out.
Well, see, I think just the opposite. I think there are some objective observers who have dug into this and looked, and they find, there is just some really unusual things going on here. And
well, see here, there's another one of the words that's being used improperly. Nobody doubts that there's unusual things. When you have an election with 200 million people voting, you're going to have unusual things.
Yeah, but large.
The question is you can have extremely large scale, unusual things. That isn't necessarily fraud.
Yeah, well, but it's most likely fraud. It's
Not even most
possibly,
likely.
yeah.
It's
See,
just
this is where I
unusual.
disagree with you. If if you have a wife that suspects her husband of cheating, and she's doing the laundry and sees lipstick on his shirt, that doesn't prove anything. What is that? Now, if it's my wife, that's enough. I'm dead. Okay? For her, that's enough evidence. Now, for other people, what does that prove? Well, you might have just brushed into somebody or whatever. Well, what happens when someone says, hey, what was your husband doing over at that hotel with that other woman? What? What? Now, what does that prove? Doesn't prove anything. Now, see.
But see, that's a mixing of metaphors in that you are extrapolating from a single case of evidence of infidelity to say you're extrapolating that out to then say, therefore, my husband who and 100 other thousand husbands are also unfaithful because Bret Carpenter's shirt has lipstick on it. Nobody's doubting that you can look around and find some cases of obvious conclusive fraud. Very few people are gonna say that if you dug, you wouldn't find signatures that are inconsistent, dead people voted, whatever. You're gonna find those. Is it enough that you can find, you can prove enough of it to say now it overturns the election, or are you extrapolating out and saying, therefore, anything unusual, even if it's of a different nature, must also be fraud?
Yeah, but here's the thing. You don't need that much fraud to overturn the election. There's I think it's 44,000 votes different would overturn 3 states. I mean, most of these swing states were won by just a very small margin. So I think it's Nevada has 10,000 votes. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But I'm just saying it doesn't take a whole lot. It's not like it's going to take millions of fraudulent votes to overturn the election. It's just a very small amount. So I think in certain states, I think Nevada, I think when Rand Paul came up and said, yeah, I think this election was stolen from President Trump, because there was far more questionable votes than the 10,000. And I think in all these states, there are just by far more questionable votes. And when the Republicans try to get this evidence examined, because they think, look, this looks like fraud to me, well, they're being resisted. They're being blocked. They're being stopped. And now that makes me think, well, wait, there is something to this. Because if there weren't, let's examine the evidence. But because they don't want to examine it, I'm pretty sure the Republicans are right.
Yeah, but see, that to me is not a strong claim either. To say that the side that right now officially is winning does not want to replay, doesn't want to do an instant replay on the last play of the game, that doesn't prove that they've committed fraud. The Republicans didn't want to recount Florida in 2020. I mean, in 2000.
But they did, and
that's not the point. The point is they didn't want to. They fought the recount all the way because they had already been declared winner. They didn't want to go in. Nobody who's already winning wants to replay even if they think everything was kosher.
But I'm saying, but they did.
No, but the Supreme Court stopped it. And they lobbied the Supreme Court to stop the recount. My point is only this. My point is not a moral equivalency test. My point is the fact that Democrats don't want to recount everything does not mean that they committed fraud. Those two things don't equate. That's my only point.
I'm not even saying. Well, then you're almost at the situation where you're saying we can't know, and since they refuse and are doing everything possible they can to do a recount, we cannot know. So
no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Republicans should not lobby and shouldn't try to get a recount. I'm just saying that the Democrats opposing a recount is not evidence of fraud at all. That's what any winning team would do on the last play of the game. They are not going to throw out the instant replay flag on themselves.
Yeah, but it's more than just not wanting to. They are, I mean, the opposing side to me is actually blocking me. You know, when I do posts, I've had many posts just taken down, blocked.
I agree. Look, that's a separate issue. That's big
who are we
tech.
talking about? I was talking about the opposing side. I think that the mainstream media is all part of this. I think they work for the Democrat Party.
I would agree. I don't
Okay.
think that anybody disagrees with that.
Okay, well then, how is it possible? Well, let me just give you.
And see, that to me is one of those evident. That to me is a point in which you can say that's voter fraud in a sense, in that you have these enormous corporations who are on one side. They are definitely weighting the scale to one side, and I don't think anyone doubts that. But it's not a fraud that you can overturn anything on. So even if you can prove that Twitter is pro Democrats, can't do anything about it. Makes no. They could come out and admit it and say, we put our thumb on the scale, and not one single vote's going to change over that.
Okay. Well, here's. Let me just give you a specific example. The lawsuit that Giuliani put forth in Pennsylvania, from what I saw, and I actually saw witnesses testifying, saying publicly, and according to Giuliani, they signed sworn affidavits under perjury that these poll watchers in Pennsylvania were blocked from viewing the counting of the ballots. Now, when this case was taken to a judge in Pennsylvania, the judge actually accepted the case, and there probably was one of the very few, not the only one that I can think of, where the Republicans won. We're going to look at it based on the merits. The judge said this has merit. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, because they're all corrupt, they shut it down. They took it from that judge and says, you can't rule on this. And it was hidden.
Okay.
Well, okay. Why would you have a whole group of poll watchers, and I have every reason to believe they're telling the truth. They were willing to sign affidavits under, criminal, perjury. They would actually be fined or go to jail for lying. It all made sense. Why would poll watchers be kicked out unless you're committing fraud? What possible motive would they have to refuse?
Well, there's a number of motives that could be. I mean, have you looked at the ones in Detroit? I mean, the same thing kind of happened in Detroit.
Oh, it only happens in the swing states.
No, but hold on. Well, yes, but that again does not that doesn't prove fraud.
No, it
in
doesn't.
Detroit, they kick them out. When you go in and read the reasons they're giving, they're all legitimate reasons. Now, whether they're true or not is to be ascertained. But to say they will not wear their mask, they refuse to wear masks, they're chanting they won't wear a mask in the polling place. Yeah, that's a legitimate reason to remove somebody from there.
What excuse are you going to come up with? I mean, here's the way I've seen from the Democrats. When you present your argument, they just say, oh, that's not true. I saw the last debate with Trump and Biden. I saw all of them. But it was just ridiculous. Trump's accused of lying and lying. Trump was dumbfounded. Trump, Mr. Exaggerator himself, was dumbfounded by just how straight-faced Biden can lie about everything. Wait, I saw you. I have video of you saying that you're going to stop fracking. Never said such a thing. I've never said such a thing. But I have it on video. I've seen. No, never said it. I actually saw Bernie Sanders arguing one time with Biden. Didn't you on the House floor the other day say that? Oh, I never said that. What are you talking about? I was there. You said that. No, I never said it. Never said it. It's like everything he says, it's like he can just lie plain. And I've noticed this about the Democrats. Every single argument the Republicans put forth, they just give an excuse why it isn't the case. And now, how do we know? And it bothers me that the other side believes so easily their excuses. Oh, they weren't wearing masks. Those Democrats aren't following the mask mandate either. This is all show. That's why we see all their leaders in the restaurants drinking wine and having a big party in a big gathering. Don't you wear a mask?
No,
And then they
there's
do.
a difference between the Democrat leaders who everyone acknowledges are hypocrites, but that fits into the leftist worldview that the leaders of the Glorious Revolution aren't subject to its mandates. There's a difference between them and the average day volunteer person working in a polling station who insists that everyone wear their mask. And you have these Republicans, and they're on video. They got them on video being hauled off, chanting they're not going to wear their mask. And then they say, they removed me from the polling place. Well, that's well. My point was, you say, what possible reason can you have for removing observers? Like in Detroit, they removed observers. They allowed in almost double the amount they were required to have, and then a lot of the ones that came in turned out to be very problematic and causing troubles.
Okay, I'm not talking about that group. I'm talking about the group that was allowed in. And there was no problem with not wearing masks. And they were asked to leave at a certain time. And as soon as they leave, then they start pulling out the boxes of ballots.
And where did this happen?
What's that?
And where did this happen?
That, see, I would have to look it up. But I mean, this is like one of the most well-known cases. I mean, it's all over the internet. That one where they had video cameras of them.
Well, it must be true if it's all over the internet.
No, I'm just saying. Actually, no, I'm just saying this for reference.
Well, the problem is I can't find any of those that verify out.
Wait a second.
I read them and I dig in, and I find actual video evidence, and I find explanations coming from both sides, and I realize this isn't what they claimed it was. So Detroit, they kicked all these people out. They cardboarded up the windows. They weren't going to let them look. And then you read it and go, wait a minute. There were still more observers in the room than they were required to have when they started pulling people out and not letting people back in.
Okay.
So that's not explained.
So you don't know, because it happened in so many different places. I don't know if it was Wisconsin or Michigan, or if it was Arizona.
The only one I have seen.
Okay, I think it was in Arizona.
Arizona.
I'm thinking it was Arizona, where they removed the poll watchers, and as soon as they removed the poll, it was like at midnight. It was like, I think it was like 10:30, midnight. They asked them all to leave, go home. We're done counting, and as soon as they leave, they start pulling out the boxes, and they had it on video that this happened. And they start running the scanners, the ballots through the scanners after the poll watchers left.
Michigan.
Well, he's saying it happened also in Arizona. See, I can't find any case of these that bear out. Other than claims, I can't find. And look, I'm not saying to a level of Supreme Court evidence. I'm saying just to my own, where I could say, yeah, that was probably a fraudulent thing that happened. Why can't I find any of them that convince me? If I'm so fair-minded and so open-minded, like you say I am, and so even-handed, then I should be able to find something easily that shows me that.
Because I think you're too easily accepting, oh, well, they wouldn't wear masks. Oh, okay, that's a good excuse. Are you sure that's the reasoning? Because I never saw that in the case I'm talking about. I never saw.
No, that's not what I said though about the mask. I just said that is a alternate explanation that is legitimate. You're saying what other reason could there be than that they were committing fraud? I'm saying I can give you 5 or 6 other reasons that would be a legitimate cause to remove poll workers or poll watchers.
You couldn't find, if it was absolutely impossible to find poll watchers that were married, see, that's hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to believe that you can't find anyone who's willing to wear a mask to watch that these votes are. I just don't believe that.
But I'm yet to find evidence that there was anywhere where they removed all poll watchers. They removed the ones that had not signed up in time, meaning the extra ones. Some of them are removed. They closed the doors and said no one else can come in. You can stay here, but if you leave, you can't come back. They did that. But in all times I have found the poll watchers, they still had more than sufficient of them in there.
See, I haven't seen that. The ones I've seen, the poll watchers were required to be like 50 feet away. It wasn't a reasonable distance where you could actually.
I read that
observe
too,
anything.
but then I read testimony from Republican poll watchers saying those were the ones who were not. They were like the extra ones that just showed up and said we want to watch too. Not the ones that had volunteered in time and were supposed to be there.
I would have to see that. I would have to see the Republican poll watchers saying, yeah, it was just them. I haven't seen that. I've only seen the Republican poll watchers who are signing these affidavits saying, no, we were excluded from viewing.
Right, but then that goes back to the thing. See, I don't consider those people who are willing to drive from 3 states away, show up 6 hours late, and demand to be let in.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who were there on time, who were asked to leave at a specific time.
Well, see, but I want you to tell me exactly where, because I'm not trying to argue with you about this, but you have to show me the actual evidence. So where did this happen, and where can I find the data that backs that up? That I can look at actual data and say, okay, now I see this.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Okay, there's hundreds and hundreds of allegations of fraud, right?
Yeah. Don't you think it's kind of like Bigfoot? I mean, everybody has at least one 4K camera in their pocket, at least one. Some people more than one. And it's like Bigfoot. We have these blurry images. Where's the high def video?
The high def video. This is what I'm trying to get at. I think you are demanding an excessive amount of evidence, and I'm not saying that these allegations prove fraud, but I think there's enough. I think it's called prima facie evidence. It's enough evidence where it deserves a hearing. It's enough evidence where these things should be seen and examined by an impartial party and ruled upon. That's why I think the Republicans are taking these things to court. But they're being blocked, but they're not being blocked on merit. The judges aren't saying we're not going to see this because you're not right or we don't like your evidence. They're saying you filed too late. That was the argument that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court put forth. They had I think it was called the doctrine of latchets. They put forth some argument. We're not going to see this. And I was looking at this and I was like, are you kidding me? And their argument was that you should have presented this case earlier. You should have presented this before this happened. You knew their laws had changed months ago and you didn't bring forth anything. Well, the other side, they're saying, yeah, but how can we bring a lawsuit before the crime has been committed? Which is basically what they were demanding. It just seems to me that none of these cases are being shut down on merit. Not how you are shutting them down. You're saying, no, this doesn't look like good enough. Well, I haven't seen any court rule like that.
So here's the deal.
Why? Let me just
Go ahead.
Here's what bothers me. And this is something that, now, to you, this isn't good evidence. But to me, it's very suspicious. Biden wins an election winning 527 counties. Trump loses the election winning 2,547 counties. So nearly almost 5 times as many counties. Nothing like this, even close to this, has ever happened in U.S. history. But it can be done because, as the other side says, land area doesn't vote, it's people. And you have a whole lot of people in these small areas, in these big counties, millions of people. And yet, at the same time, I'm sitting there looking, isn't this crazy that the swing states have the highest percentage of voter turnout of any other place in the whole country? Just the states that need it, just the counties that need it. Gee, how convenient. And it's never happened before in history, and it happens in this election. And I'm supposed to just say, wow, they were just all fired up for Biden, even though Biden couldn't get one person to go to any of his rallies.
See, but none of that's evidence. I mean, that's all fine, and that plays well across the coffee table. But it's not evidence. That's not evidence. That's innuendo.
Well, wait a second. Then it isn't evidence. You're saying then it is not evidence if the wife finds the husband went to some hotel with some other woman.
But that's not at all what you're claiming.
Yeah, I'm saying statistically, it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense that in just the only counties that are needed for them to win have by far the highest number of voter turnout ever in U.S. history.
You're only saying it doesn't make sense because you're looking at it from a very lopsided perspective. You're looking at it from a non-dynamic perspective. You're not taking into account the obvious dynamics of an election. Now, you're looking at it the way non-economists look at tax law. We're going to put in these taxes, and then people are going to pay them, and our tax revenue is going to go up. They don't think, well, wait a minute, these people also are going to make their plans, and they're going to figure out ways around them. And then we're going to try to figure out ways around their ways, and then they're going to figure out ways around our ways, and it's going to go round and around and around. You're not looking at the other side, that they actually say, okay, what do we need to win legitimately without fraud? What do we need to accomplish to win? We need these targeted counties to have a very high turnout. Because if we can get that turnout high, we know there's enough Democrats or lean Democrat in there or never Trumpers in there that we can win.
Yeah, but the other side's doing it also. Trump was doing it.
No, they're doing it terribly. No, Trump is terrible. The fact that the fact that he had not already challenged in court mail-in balloting, do you think that the Democrats would not have had already tons of cases in court already challenging a mail-in balloting if it showed that mail-in ballots would lean heavily Republican? The Republicans are terrible at the ground game. They're just horrible.
Well, wait a second. But so you do recognize that mail-in balloting is very conducive to fraud.
Oh, of course it is. I have no doubt it is. I hate mail-in balloting. But you have to actually prove vote by vote. You can't just say, okay, statistically, mail-in balloting is going to produce X amount percentage of fraud. Therefore, we're just going to knock off that percentage off the side that wanted it. You can't do that, even if statistically that's true. You would have to then say, this ballot's fraud, this ballot's fraud, this ballot's fraud, and you got to come up with 40,000 in one state, 5,000 in another state. It's a lot. That's a lot of votes to come up with. Not to say that there aren't 4,000 fraudulent mail-in ballots in Nevada. The question is, can you prove that one particular vote is fraudulent? Our electoral system makes that almost impossible.
Okay, right. Well, this is what I'm getting at. Your proof is ballot by ballot. Examine it. It's what the other side will not allow. So
neither side will allow this. There's no way to do it any other way. You can't. What are you suggesting happen? We randomly select 4,000 ballots. We say, okay, statistically in Nevada there were 3,000 fraudulent ballots. How are we going to? Which ones? Which ones? Wait a second.
No, I think you have to have a hand recount, and you have to allow.
It won't make a difference. The envelopes have been separated from the ballots.
What's that?
The envelopes have been separated from the ballots. You don't know.
Right.
All you're going to do is count the ballots that are there. It's not going that you're not talking about a recount. You're talking about you want an audit, not a recount.
Okay. Okay. I want an audit.
But they can't now. The ballots have been separated from the envelopes. There's no audit possible.
But listen to what you're saying to me. The evidence that you're demanding, basically you're saying can't be done. So you're basically saying there cannot be evidence. So there is no way that the Republicans can prove their case.
Right. Exactly. I'm not happy about this. This isn't like I'm like, woohoo! I'm just telling you the facts. This is why I find it unlikely when people tell me they have evidence. I'm like, I'm not sure that you have that. And that doesn't even go, that doesn't even enter into the real fraud that took place, that even if you had evidence would make no difference.
They don't, no. They don't have the evidence that you're asking for. They have different evidence. I saw, have you seen, I saw an economist who, he presented a case to Arizona, their legislature. What he did is he just took the voter rolls that the government supplied him. He said he had to pay for these. So he put all these names into his database, and he designed a certain program, and he uncovered what he thought was obvious fraud. Now, statistical evidence, no, he didn't go through those. But what he noticed was in these big Democrat, I think it was Maricopa County, I think it's where Phoenix is, they had just an incredibly high number of what he called anomalous people. He called them fake people, because when he put them in these categories, he just found some just very unusual, occurrences of these names. He found, I can't remember, just 300, 400, 500,000 unique last names. And when you compare this to the country, it makes absolutely no sense, because it basically means you have 500,000 people in that county who have no relatives, no brothers, sisters, sons, fathers, aunts, no one, because they have all these unique last names. So what this guy did was he divided all the names on the voter rolls into 5 categories. He had strong Republican, moderate Republican, swing voter, moderate Democrat, strong Democrat. And he just wanted to divide this up and to see how many people fit into each of these groups. And he did this based on sex, male, female, and then there were these undecided groups, these undecided voters. And he was, in his argument was mathematically, he's a mathematician, he's an economist but a mathematician. He discovered that when he compared the ages in each of these categories from 18 to 100 years old, he found out that when he tried to correlate the ages to how they voted over time in each group, he found that men had I think it was like a 64%, fairly high, not real high, correlation in how they voted over time. So they really, they might have been, as young, a moderate Republican, and then as they got older, they became a strong Republican. But when they did with the women, they found that there was only a 58% correlation. So the women actually looked as though they changed how they voted over time. But then when he looked at this undecided category, this U category, he found that there was a 94% correlation. And when he saw that, he concluded, this is unrealistic. This makes no sense. These are fake people. These are people who have been just added into this voter roll that don't exist. Partly because why would you have a huge amount of Republicans filling out their voter registration as undecided on their sex? And to him, when he came out and he presented his argument, I saw him, Giuliani was talking with him. He said, how certain are you of this? How certain are you that these are fake people? He said, I would stake my life on it. He said, mathematically, this is not possible. Statistically speaking, this guy's a mathematician. Now, it doesn't make sense to me that you would have 500,000 people in a county that have unique last names. I'm thinking, yeah, that makes his argument made sense to me. I'm like, yeah, that's ridiculous, because in my house, we have 7 Carpenters. It would be like, how many states could you go to and not find another Jackson? Really? But it seems as though it's in these swing states, it's in the states that it's necessary for there to have a high number of votes that you have these anomalies. But there are so many anomalies There's so many anomalies in these swing states that it has to make you start thinking, wait a second, this is, yeah, just one by itself might, be hard to buy. Well, here's what happened. I saw like a week ago a rally. It looked like a rally in Arizona based upon this guy's findings, his argument, his statistical argument. You had a citizens group go out and start canvassing their neighborhoods. They took the voter rolls and they started going to houses, knocking on doors. Are you the person that lives in this house? They only went to, that I saw that night, it was like a 2-hour thing. I was bored. These aren't public speakers. These are just citizens. And they came forward and say, well, out of the 100 houses I went to, 30 of them were vacant fields, empty lots, public buildings. They found an incredible number of registered voters who do not live where they say they live. They do not exist. But it was so high that if you extrapolate for the whole county, well, you have hundreds of thousands of potentially fraudulent voters. But it seemed to fit.
Okay, but let me ask you this then. So you take that and you look at that and you say, that's very compelling. Have you looked at anybody who offers a reasonable explanation for that? That you could say, that's a reasonable explanation. I
have looked.
Okay, what'd you find?
Look, the statistician, I remembered his name, Bobby Piton. I looked online, Bobby Piton refuted. I have looked to see anyone, and this guy's still going around, and he's still presenting his statistical arguments. And I haven't seen anyone who's saying, he just did it, and I think he just did it like 2 days ago, because I've been following this guy. A couple of days ago, he did the same thing in Pennsylvania, and he found almost 600,000 unique last names in Pennsylvania, which he thinks is very strange.
Yeah, but have you found anyone that?
No, I haven't found anyone who has debunked his claims.
Have you looked? Because
Yes,
one of the difficulties I have,
to find someone who has debunked him.
well, one of the difficulties I have is I find that a lot of people who want to argue for fraud don't really look too hard for an alternate explanation, which I find they're generally not hard to find.
Well, I'm throwing this out to you, but what I'm saying is the people who believed him actually went out, and it seems like they corroborated what he was saying.
Assuming that they're trustworthy. But I have a hard time trusting. Well, see, that's why you got to have actual evidence, not eyewitness accounts. Eyewitness accounts is the worst form of evidence possible.
These people seem very trustworthy to me. I mean,
that's the problem. Well, see, if I wanted to commit anti-fraud, I would definitely choose trustworthy people to do that. I mean, no doubt. I mean, really committed, zealot. Somebody who is so zealous about their cause that they're willing to give a whole night of their life to go out and allegedly find the fraud.
But here's the position we're in. I don't know these people. I'm watching them. If there was anything suspicious, or I thought, I have to use my own criteria, what I think, it would be like me telling someone, no, I think Michael's trustworthy. What?
As evidence, yes, that's true. That would be a laugh. You have to have actual evidence, and that's why, and that's the thing. See, again, this is what I'm saying. The Republicans are so bad. They're so bad at this.
Evidence? If these people go out and they do spend their time, they thought this was evidence. These people aren't living where they say they live. Why should I not accept that as evidence?
If the people don't live where they say they live, and if the numbers are as big as they are, as they would need to be, then that would be fine. But you have to prove that. And somebody's saying, I went to that place and it wasn't a house. I looked it up on Google Earth and it wasn't there. None of that's evidence. This is my point.
You know,
You have to prove it. You actually have to have hard evidence of it. And that is
Why?
not easy. Why do you think that it takes
Wait
a
a
state?
second.
Hold on, just give me finish. Why do you think it takes a state so long to bring a case to trial? Because you cannot just go in there and stand up and say, I went to his grandma's house and that door wasn't painted the color he said.
but it wasn't
Like, okay, what color? Like, where's the evidence? You can't just say it.
Well, that's what an eyewitness is. I saw,
And they are
I tested.
extraordinarily unreliable. They're the worst possible evidence you can give is an eyewitness account.
They actually said, if you don't believe us, we took pictures of these places. They, you know,
Right. And what is the chain of evidence on those pictures? And how are they ascertaining that what they took a picture of is really what they're saying they took a picture of? You have to
But wait a
prove
second.
every step of that if you want to reverse hold on, if you have to prove every step of that if you want to actually reverse a vote.
right.
The problem I have is Donald Trump and his cadre, including yourself, they are trying to win this in the court of public opinion. It's never going to work. It is a doomed enterprise.
But now I'm just going to come back with you with what you're saying to me. I'm not trying to prove this in court. I just wanted sufficient evidence for me to persuade me that what they're saying is true. When I saw these witnesses come forth, I thought they were legitimate witnesses. I thought their research was legitimate. And until someone yes, they didn't have an official badge that makes it real evidence. These were just citizens, concerned citizens, who went out checking the voter rolls, and they seemed very persuasive. They seemed like honest people. It didn't seem like they were up to any no good. And I don't know why, for me personally, why I can't accept that.
Well, you can accept anything you want. You can accept that the tooth fairy told you that it happened.
But
What I'm talking
I
about
think
is
you're being
I'm
unfair.
interested in actual evidence that can make a difference. If it's just about feeling better about the election, well, whatever. I mean, anything can make me feel better, but I can see a shape in a brownie and feel better about it.
What evidence would you accept that a person doesn't live at an address if you're not going to accept a person going there and verifying that they don't live there?
The quality of evidence that would be required to pass muster in a court of law, which means you have to have a chain of command of the evidence itself, not just somebody shows up and says, hey, look, I took a picture of this empty lot. See this empty lot? Somebody says they live here and it's an empty lot. And you're
What
looking
chain
like,
of evidence? What chain of evidence do you need? Is what I'm saying.
well, you have to have in other words, evidence has to have a chain of custody.
What I'm saying is, but I think it
So
did. I think these people.
No, these people didn't have any chain of custody. You kidding me? They have a cell phone and they took a picture of an empty lot and they said, see, nobody lives there. And someone says they do.
But wait a second. They go to the address.
How do you know they went to the address other than their word of it? That's not evidence.
Wait a second.
How do you know they went to the address?
Wait. This is what I'm getting at. This is what I'm trying to get. If it were a police officer that went to the address, would you not accept it?
Not if he doesn't have a chain of custody on his evidence. Not if he doesn't have nobody would. A police officer stands up. Hold on. A chain. Well, what do you mean? What chain?
I want to know why a chain of custody all of a sudden makes it real, makes it good evidence.
In a court of law, without a chain of custody, evidence gets thrown out.
What chain of custody? What do you need? What are you talking about?
You have to know. I'm trying to explain to you. You don't let me finish. So you have to have actual concrete evidence that the police officer actually went to the place he said he went to. So you would have logs. His car would have GPS logs that are registered to the state and audited by independent auditors of where he actually went. You'd have body cam evidence of it that's also logged independently. They would be able to prove we actually were standing at the place we said we were standing. This is an actual picture of what we said we were taking a picture of. Here's evidence in the photograph of the time when the picture was taken.
Right.
All of this stuff is all very expensive to do. Very, very expensive and very time consuming. Right. And when they get to a court of law and let me finish. Because you asked me, when they get to the court of law and they're trying to convict you of some crime that they said you did, and they have a picture of where it happened and what you did, any link in that chain that comes up not substantiated, that evidence is thrown out of court.
Here's the thing. I don't think so. I think if there's a crime next door and I saw it happen, I don't have to go there with camera, video evidence. It's just my testimony. I saw it. It happened at that time. And I think my testimony will be accepted. These people did log the time. They logged the date. They logged the address. They did take camera. I don't know that they were doing this so that they could prove this in court.
That's my point, though.
Albert says that witnesses with Albert, he's a cop. He says that witnesses with corroborating statements is excellent evidence.
There, he's supporting you. Albert doesn't get to eat anymore this week for being on your side.
Oh.
We're going to put him on a diet.
I'm not saying that they have proven anything. I'm just saying.
But my point is this. My point is this: the fact that they did not do this in a way that could somehow actually stand up is the problem.
No,
Trump and his supporters are trying to win this only in the same way Trump does everything. Half-hearted.
These people don't have all the money in the world. They aren't public officials. What they wanted to do was present their findings to people in power.
So someone else would do the work.
This is what we found. They wanted to present this to motivate these public officials. Look, we found this. We think you guys need to examine the voter rolls. That was their objective. They want to clean up. They want to make sure that the next election, that there can't be all this possible fraud.
Well, this isn't going to do it. That's not going to accomplish anything. In my opinion, what you're saying they did is absolutely pointless.
Then how can you persuade the government that that the voter rolls are just totally?
Everybody knows they are. You don't have to persuade anybody. Everybody knows the voter rolls are a joke. Everybody knows that the system has been allowed to languish in archaic form precisely because it allows them to game the system.
Okay, but
every other country in the world dips your thumb in iodine when you vote.
Okay.
So every person in the country can only vote one possible time.
Right.
That's just one thing, but everybody almost every country in the world does that except for us. Why don't we do that?
Here's what kills me. You say everybody knows this. That's what I'm saying. And everybody knows that the Democrats stole this election. We know this.
Even if that were true, and see, I think people get the misimpression that I'm arguing that there was no fraud. My point is I can't find anyone to be able to prove that there's fraud. And the evidence they offer, in my opinion, is very poor. I know Albert says that corroborating witnesses are strong, and that may be in a criminal case where you have witnesses, but I do not think that if one club, let's say one sorority, were to blame another sorority for a crime and all the sorority brothers all pledged that they saw the same thing, that corroborating witness would be strong.
Okay.
Right. I think if you had independent people who didn't know each other, they corroborate each other's witness on something, then you could say that's pretty strong. But even then, that would have to be weighed by a jury. And I think that a chain of custody on actual physical evidence is far stronger than eyewitnesses who line up and say, yes, we saw the same thing.
Right. I'm just trying to explain to you why I think that there's the evidence that I can get a hold of, and I can't examine the ballots. But let me just give you another one that you're going to reject. Okay.
Okay.
Because I saw the testimony. I saw when Giuliani went, and I watched the guy, and he went and he examined the way the votes came in. This is Arizona, and at 8:46 in the morning, there was a spike, an anomaly, because you can see how the votes are just flowing in for Trump and Biden, 8:46 p.m., boom, just a huge spike for Biden, just what they call a vote dump. They just, for Biden. And it was 143,000 votes come in, almost all for Biden. And he's looking at this. So what he did is he examined in that county where these votes supposedly came in, and he noticed that all the vote scanners in that county, if they were operating all at the same time, they couldn't put in that many votes. It exceeded the capacity of the scanners for that many votes to come in. Okay? And so he said, this is not possible. Something happened here. He thinks someone's cheating somehow. He said, physically, it isn't possible. Unbeknownst to him and everyone else, because these guys, later on, they found this. And let me read you this letter that they got. This was an anonymous letter sent to all the legislature in Arizona, and it was sent to the Department of Justice. Now, here's the problem. It's anonymous. It says, please be advised that Pima County Recorder, located at 2040 Stone Avenue, Tucson, Arizona, in Pima County, Arizona, and the Democratic Party added fraud votes in the initial count to the vote by mail totals released at 8 p.m. on November 3rd. There were approximately 35,000 fraud votes added to each Democrat candidate, vote total candidates, impacted in Clinic County, state and federal election in city, county, state, and federal election candidates. In a meeting I was invited to by the Democrat Party in Pima County, Arizona on September 10th, 2020, no phones or recording devices were allowed at the presentation, as the presentation was given, including detailed plans to embed 35,000 in a spread configured distributed to each Democrat candidate vote totals. When I was asked how in the world were 35,000 to be kept hidden from being discovered, it was stated that the spread distribution will be embedded across the total registered vote range and will not exceed the registered vote count in the 35,000 was determined allowable for Pima County based on our county registered vote count. It was also stated that the total voter turnout versus total registered voter determine how many votes we can embed. The embedding will auto-adjust based on voter turnout. Because the embedded votes are distributed sporadically, the votes will not be found. If an audit were, wait, hold on. I spoke this, so I spelled a lot of things wrong. If I ordered it, because the embeds are in groups of approximately 1,000. This is how the county recorder can declare an oversight issue or, I typed this all wrong. Let me just read down. Because our Maricopa County embedded totals will be substantially higher due to embeds being calculated based on the total number of registered voters. When I asked, has it ever been tested and how do we know this works? The response was yes, has been tested, has had been shown significant success in Arizona judicial retention elections since 2014. Now, here's the thing. They get this anonymous letter, and they were actually saying, we want this anonymous person to come forward. We want him to come forward. But the thing is, it corresponds what they're saying with the vote spike. That's why this guy said, hey, this looks real. It looks as though somehow they embedded these votes. I don't know how they're doing it, which in my thinking, there's just too many lines of evidence at that are in agreement. The whole time I've been watching all this, every day. If I would have known I've been speaking to you, I would have been writing this evidence down as I've been watching it. Because I see this, oh yeah, and then I go by, and then the next day I see more, and I would have saved it all, and I would have investigated, would have had just concrete stuff for you. No, not the evidence you want, but they did do a forensics audit on one Dominion machine. One judge in the whole country had enough guts to say, yeah, we're going to allow a forensic audit, and they concluded that the machine was designed to commit fraud.
Yeah, that's been debunked, in my opinion, quite solidly.
Wait a second. By a person, I saw they're debunking it, but they didn't do a forensic audit on it. They didn't go back and say, well, we're going to do a forensic audit and see if that. They just said, no, these guys didn't know what they were talking about, and these people were experts. And that was their job, and the judge allowed them to do it. And it seems to me, why am I? Oh, and just recently, the executives of Dominion were saying our machines are secure, but they proved it wrong a few days ago because they hacked into one in 2 minutes in Georgia. And then they came out, the executives later, and said, well, yeah, these are connected to the internet. The whole time they're saying, no, these aren't connected to the internet. These are safe. And now, after they proved we can hack in 2 minutes on one of these and change the votes, and then now they're saying, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess it can be, but right. We all know those can be hacked into.
Well, everything can be hacked into. The question, let's go back to the Dominion thing real quick. So I read the debunk, and the debunk goes through the numbers and goes through the process and shows that what they're calling their evidence that fraud happened is only they're counting what was logged as that the machine logs warnings. Whenever anything needs to be examined or tabulated by hand, it logs a warning. They're counting all of those logged warnings as fraud points, when that's not at all what they are. I mean, the numbers line up. So the people the ones that did the audit say,
you're assuming that what they're saying that the forensics audit did is what they actually did. You're just assuming that.
What do you? I don't follow you. Explain that.
You're saying that they counted what you were just explaining. They're counting this as an error when it really. Well, you're just assuming that they did that. You're just assuming that what they're claiming they did wrong. You're assuming that that's what they did wrong. But where's the evidence?
Well, the logs are the evidence. The logs are the evidence. When they did the quote unquote audit on the machine, all they did, as far as I can tell, and you show me where they proved that they didn't do this, but from what I can tell, what they said they did. Hold on.
How can I prove that they didn't do that?
Hold on. Let me finish.
You had to prove that they did do that.
Hold on. You're not listening to me. That's not what I'm saying. The ones who did the audit on the machine, they looked at the error log and counted it in a certain way. They looked at that and said, look at there were 10,667, there were 15,676 error log entries, and 68% of them were such and such. That's the numbers. I got them right here. I'm looking at them.
Okay.
When you go in and say, okay, what is the error log? And the error log is produced, you find out it isn't what those that claim fraud say it is.
How do you know? Because
you have the error log to look at. That's my point. When they actually produce the error log and you realize what the error log consists of, it's not what those that are claiming fraud say it was. Because you can look at the error log. It's there.
Wait a second. But this is what I'm getting back to. You're saying that these MIT, Harvard graduates whose job is to do forensic audits, they don't know what they're doing. That's what you're telling me.
I'm saying it's possible. That's why I want to see the actual. That's why I want to see the actual log.
This is what they do for a living.
Yeah, maybe. That's. I want to see the actual log. You're asking me what I. So look, let me give you an example.
can't.
Let me give you yes, they can. Of course you can. Let me give you an example.
I can't. I don't have access to this information, and neither do the people who are debunking.
There's a lot of access to a lot of this information if you want to. Yes, they do. So let me give you an example. You talked about mathematical analysis and statistical impossibilities. There's a lot of those supposed claims of fraud based on that approach. And I go and for instance, there's a mathematician in Britain that does a YouTube channel called Stand Up Math. Isn't that it? I think it's Stand Up Math or something like that. I'll look it up. Anyways, he goes through and analyzes these. As far as I can tell, he's as objective as I have found. I don't see him leaning either way or caring.
Wow.
Hold on.
I see
Let me
who's
finish.
Objective, you object, and you say, "How do you know?" You laugh at me. Now,
let me
find
finish.
A guy who you think is objective.
I said, as far as I can tell, and as I think.
That's all I was saying. As far as I can tell.
Whatever. But let me finish. He analyzes the data. He gives you links on his YouTube channel, and you can download the actual raw data for yourself and look at it for yourself. The ones that are claiming fraud do not offer that data. He had to find it elsewhere. But he gives you the data and the spreadsheets so that you can then look at it yourself and determine for yourself if his analysis is accurate. I have not found anyone claiming fraud that offers the actual raw data to be examined yet.
The guy who you mean to the public?
Yes, to the public, to me, that I can download it for myself. Yes, to me.
I don't know if these people I'm listening to are offering this or not. Like the guy who I mentioned to you who did his statistical analysis in Arizona, who's now doing it. I don't know if he offers this. Now, as far as I can tell, this guy, yes, he's partisan. He's Republican. He likes Trump. But his math, as far as I can tell, looked pretty good.
But if you don't have the data, you can't tell. That's my point. The reason why I like this guy from Britain is because he actually gives you the raw data. You can check it. When he says, no, this statistical anomaly does not hold out. It is not statistically impossible, or they are double counting numbers or things like that. He actually gives you the raw data, and you can see if that's what's happening.
Okay.
So you got another case of the same thing where Bret Weinstein. Do you know who Bret Weinstein is? Have you heard of him?
I think so.
Yeah, he's pretty famous nowadays. He's one of like Jordan Peterson's buddies, and they're all in that intellectual dark web or whatever. Anyways, he's leftist. Or not leftist. I'm sorry, he would object. He's a liberal. He's a self-proclaimed liberal, not a Trump supporter. Anyways, he came out on Twitter and said, "Hey, somebody just posted this mathematical analysis of this vote and wherever, and it seems really convincing to me. Does anybody able to prove it, that it's not true?" Well, he got people coming in saying, no, it's not true. And they explained why and gave the raw data so you can see that the fraud claim was double counting stuff and were rounding in their favor. And those small rounding errors add up to great amount. Not because they say so, because you can go into and I downloaded the spreadsheets and looked at it. So this is what I'm saying. The debunk that I am looking at isn't because they're objective, although I prefer they be objective. I think that's better. But I'm fine with a flaming left-wing person if they're providing me the actual real data that I can look at and find the error in their analysis. I don't find anyone claiming fraud that is providing anywhere close to that level of evidence. It's all innuendo that I hear.
Wow.
They say they have the evidence. They have the Kraken. They have the Kraken. And then they say, I'm the Kraken.
Okay. I don't know a lot of this evidence. There is one. I don't know if he's a magician. I'll find him in just a second for you. I don't know which of these people actually are giving out their information, their evidence to the public for you to actually test for yourself. Yeah, that would be great. A lot of it, I don't think. The one guy who I did listen to who was very persuasive, he's persuasive because he is so smart, but I can't even, it was very difficult for me, even with all his charts and evidence, for me to even comprehend he's so far above me. There's no way I could actually do his statistical analysis. The things that mostly have persuaded me are things like, I listened to the testimony in front of the Arizona legislature with Giuliani. I just watched that, and it just seemed very persuasive to me. The legislature actually said, because he was asking them plain questions, do you have illegals voting? And the legislature said, we have 36,000 illegals who are registered to vote. And she said, and we know, and I wrote this down, in Maricopa County, she said, they had 4,100 that did vote, that could not prove citizenship. And they had another 4,000 that they know did vote that were out of state. And they had 6,000 voters that had no sex and birth dates of 1900. All 1900 birth dates, which whatever. But I'm just saying, in states where the election is so close, and you see things like this, and it's not just that, there's just so many different ways when you see, the dead people voting and, the out-of-state voters voting. I stopped counting. I had like 30 different ways that you could commit fraud. I wish I didn't know I was going to be doing this with you. I would have tabulated all this. I would have just shown you. But I think there is enough evidence that demands that an audit be done. Let me just find this one.
Well, look, I'm not in disagreement that there should be an audit of the vote in some places. I think there probably should be. And if there were an audit and it was done by people who understand evidentiary rules and what it takes to actually discount a vote, then you might find some enormous difference. And I'm open to the fact that there was probably quite a bit of fraud and maybe in some places sufficient to change the outcome of the election. I mean, fraud that can actually overturn a vote. Here's the deal, Brett. There is a difference between the fraud that I see took place, that if you could prove it, if the people who did it came out and swore an affidavit saying they did it, it would still not overturn a single vote. And the fraud that would actually overturn a vote. Let me give you an example. When Antifa intimidates, what I think happened, up to 5% of white males to not vote for Trump, even though they vote Republican down ticket, that's voter fraud. And if I could prove in every court of law in the world that they did it, if they came into the court of law and swore under oath that they did it, it would not change a single vote. Not one person who voluntarily voted against Trump because they were intimidated by Antifa and rioting and public discontent, public unrest. Not one of those votes can you overturn. You cannot say, well, since you were intimidated and voluntarily voted against Trump, we're going to overturn your vote and you're going to vote for Trump now. We're going to make that a Trump vote. You can't. So even if I could prove that that's what happened, and 5% of white males is more than enough to change to turn over the election, more than enough. It would actually make it a landslide Trump win. That is voter fraud that you could prove and would not make a difference. And then you have voter fraud that would make a difference, but you can't prove.
Right. Basically, see, the type of proof you're asking for, it takes too much time, it costs too much money.
Right. And so it would almost be like the Republican campaign should have listened to people who 2 years ago were being told, and I have evidence of this, 2 years ago, they were being told by Republicans on Twitter that they needed to get a ground legal game in place, and then 1 year ago when the mail-in balloting started being talked about, they were being told, you've got to start challenging this. You cannot think you're going to win this with big rallies. Republicans were tweeting this 2 years ago saying this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not that necessarily fraud was going to take place, but that they had to have a legal strategy in place. And Trump thought he could do this going out after eating a cheeseburger at night and giving a speech about the presidential plane and how he needs a better shower, and that this was going to overcome what the Democrats are able to do in the ground game.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way that you can display a graphic on your screen?
I can.
Is there any way I can send you a graphic?
Yeah, send it to let me see here. What would it go to on that? Email it to me probably.
Okay.
Email it to mnj@freebornchurch.com.
Let me see here. MNJ
at freebornchurch.com. That's only for you. Don't let YouTube know my email address.
I'm posting this.
The Trump hater emailing, trolling.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. Tell me if you get this.
You got the email up? Did you see my Bible school shirt?
Yeah, I've seen that. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I like that. Wait, so how'd that go?
That went great. Went great. I think it was the best one since the first one. Right, Nolan? Mm-hmm. He says yes.
Yes.
You're kidding me.
No, it was like the best one since the first one by far.
I liked it a little better than the first one.
He liked it better than the first one.
You mean the first one, Tamiawa?
Yes. He says it was better than that one.
Well, I don't know about that.
It was pretty good.
Okay. Did you get it?
Did you get it, Nolan? Yeah, he has it. You have to put it in that browser window.
Yeah. This thing is it's very
slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have so much going in this little Mac Mini that it's like very lethargic.
Okay. Anyone who's interested, who wants to know of the evidence, there is a website called hereistheevidence.com. Hereistheevidence.com, and they have it tabulated, and they just have tons and tons of.
Yeah, I looked at it.
Oh boy. You have a bad case of denial.
I'm not in denial. It's that there is no evidence.
Yeah,
look, I look at every piece of this. Hold on.
Yeah.
I look at every one that I come across. I honestly do. Because I would love to find the evidence. I really would. I am not trying not to see it. I am trying to find it. I really am.
You're not
in our stream. OBS is crashing.
Mm-hmm. We got too much going on.
I don't know if we're going to be able to show it. You can't show it on your screen. You can't share your screen with Skype. Sure, you can.
Let me see. If you tell me, I don't use this program. Where does it say share screen somewhere?
I would think so. I mean, up
share
there,
screen.
Yeah, there you go. Do it on your end. Ours is not going to work.
I don't know. What do you mean do it on my end?
Yeah, share your screen. Yeah, share your screen and show us your graphic because we can't get it to pull up. We got too much going on.
Hold on. Now I have to. Okay, let's see.
We can get your video just fine, but when we try to do more on this little mini, it's crashing on us.
Oh, okay. Wait,
I need Mac to come out with their new mini with their. Well, the one they have is too limited, but they're going to come out with a heavier duty mini with that M1 chip. I need the M1X. There we go.
Well, how can I tell if I'm? See, I don't see it.
Yeah, I know, but I see it. I'm looking at it. So what is that showing me?
People can't see it.
Yeah, they can. They're looking at it right now.
Oh, okay.
You're
this
just seeing. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see if I can find the guy's name. Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. he also testified with Giuliani that day, and he also did a statistical analysis of the data.
Split.
And if you can see that graph, I'm not sure exactly why he did the graph like this.
You're cut off.
But he's showing how the votes came in for Biden and Trump, and you can see that Biden ends up with a larger percentage than Trump at the end of the graph there. But what he did was he put in all the data of the percentage of Republican voters, how many Republican voters, how many Democrat voters, how many independent, how many, Green Party, Libertarian, whatever many parties. He put all this information in there. And this is actually how the votes came in. Those, the slope of the curve and the graph and how it ends up. Now, what he tried to do, and let me see if I can show you this. Hang on. I'm going to have to get rid of that, I think, to share this other graphic. So what he tried to do, can you see this next graphic that I put up?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. He tried to plot in the data to reproduce that same curve of that graph to see. So you can see up at the top, he put 80% Biden, voting 20% for Trump with the different parties. And he went through and he couldn't match it up. And he said that he spent a lot of time trying to reproduce how the votes could come in like that, how it could produce that shape of a graph. Now, let me put another one in here. And now you can see this. He changed the votes a little bit, and he's getting closer. He's actually getting closer to reproduce that same shape, the way the votes came in.
Okay.
And you can see on the top how he's changing the percentages. Well, what was interesting is, let me show you this. He actually reproduced it. And let me show you this. Okay, look at this graph. Okay. He actually reproduced it. Exactly. And he said it was the only way that he could figure out that it would produce that shape is if the Biden received from Democrats 130% of the vote, Trump minus 30% of the vote. And you can see at the top.
Yeah, that's been
Republicans,
debunked.
0%. Okay. The only way that he could find possible to reproduce the way the votes came in was if there was fraud, if there was this voter manipulation. Now, he also did this in Georgia. And what seems to me interesting is he went through like 6, 7 counties in Georgia. The only way he can ever reproduce the way the votes came in is voter fraud. It's the only way. He cannot do it any other way. Now, this just seems, and when you look at the capability of these voter machines, they can do that. And this is the claim that before he did this, this was the claim that the Republicans were making. They were saying that these machines can be set up to do this. Well, he cannot find. Now, I want to find someone who can show a different way that you can match that up. Because if that's the only possible way that you can reproduce what actually happened that night, wasn't that good statistical evidence that fraud was committed?
Sure, if that was the only way. Does he offer you the data so that people can do it himself, or is he keeping it to himself?
I don't know. I don't know, but this is why I'm trying to tell you, look the guy up.
What's his name?
It's down there, Dr.
Shiva.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this. I'm pretty sure this has been debunked by that stand-up maths guy. I have to look it up. I've seen this. I'm pretty sure this has been debunked.
Well, I don't know, because every single county he does in the swing states, and this is another thing, is this just coincidence that just in these states, the swing states, never has happened before in history, they stop the vote in the middle of the night?
That's also been debunked, that it's never happened before.
Oops. In just these swing states, I mean, it didn't happen in Indiana.
Wow.
Did it happen in Kentucky or Ohio? Why is it just these swing states that this happens?
Well, you don't know that it's just the swing states that happens. It's the swing states where you notice it happens.
I would have noticed if it happened in Indiana.
I'm not saying it happened in...
Time to take his thing off.
You got to take your picture off. Take your graphic off now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. There you go.
There you go. There you are. Again, I know that there's people on the YouTube.
But wait a second.
Okay, go ahead.
As soon as they start up their counting again, vote spike, vote spike, vote spike, vote spike, and all these places for Biden. And here was the argument that I heard. Now, everything seems to be debunked, but I understand. There's always going to be an explanation to the contrary. It's just like in the Bible. You show a verse. This is what this means. Well, they're going to have another explanation for that verse.
The difference would be if you say the Bible says this and you show no verse. That's my problem with the people alleging fraud. They're not showing any of the actual data. They're just showing the conclusions. And I can make that graph look just like that without voter fraud. I just draw it like that. If I don't actually offer the raw data to be examined, then I'm not proving anything. I'm not proving anything, though. My problem I have, see, I know I'm looking at the comments, and there's people on the YouTube comments that are angry at me. They think I'm a Trump hater. First, let me go on record saying I don't like Trump at all. I've never liked Trump.
Let me be on record. Trump, George Washington, Trump, Abraham Lincoln, in that order.
Really?
Yes.
You think Trump is a better president than Reagan?
Think he's yes.
Why is that? That's curious. Why do you think Trump is better than Reagan?
Well, it's actually hard to compare. I Reagan was great, but Trump is, I don't know if first of all, the thing I hated about United States more than anything was the PC culture. Mm-hmm. He just came in and just trashed that.
Sure, he did.
I just love the guy. I love the way he speaks. Obviously he's not better than Reagan fiscally. Really, the guy is printing up the money like there's no
He's not better than Reagan politically. He's not the politician Reagan was. He's not better than Reagan diplomatically.
I don't think Reagan could do what Trump is doing. I think Reagan would have caved in by now. I think Reagan had lost his memory by now.
What are you talking about, lost his memory?
I don't know what you mean. How great.
Trump is not a good politician.
That's why he's so good.
No, I think that's why he's terrible. I think that's the problem. I think that's why he didn't get the border wall done. He didn't get the border wall built. The great builder did not get the border wall built.
He's had more opposition than Reagan.
That's why you have to have a politician. Everyone uses opposition like an excuse. Of course there's going to be opposition. That's why you need a politician.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Reagan have the guts to name Jerusalem the capital of Israel?
I don't even care about Jerusalem.
Oh, I'm just saying, did he
I'm not an Israeli. I'm an American. I want a border wall here, not a border wall in Israel.
And do you think Trump doesn't want a border wall?
I think he does. I don't think he built it. And the reason why is got to drive to the border and it's not there. That's evidence. I can send you a picture right now in my front yard that you'll see no border wall. Well, that's evidence for you.
Well, I know there's. Did Reagan get the border wall built?
He didn't promise a border wall. I just want him to do what he promised. Look, again, let me finish. So, on the record, hold on. I am not, let me finish. Let me finish what I was saying.
Okay.
I want to be on the record. I do not like Trump. I did not vote for him in the primary the first time. I wouldn't have voted for him in the primary this time if there would have been a primary. I voted for him both times as president, and I don't regret that.
Right. You're voting
I think that Trump is the best president we've ever had when it comes to pro-life decisions and for the judiciary. I think and you have to give credit to McConnell. There's a huge part of the Senate involved in that. But Trump, McConnell, best team when it comes to the judiciary. It's not even close. It's not even close, okay? So it's not that I think that everything he does is terrible, but I want a politician to be president. I do not want a businessman. I've never been in favor. I don't want a neurosurgeon to be president. I don't want a businessman to be president. I want somebody who understands how politics works.
If I remember back, you liked Ben Carson.
I do like Ben Carson. I don't want him to be president. I would not have voted for him.
The reason I wanted, and I think Trump miscalculated the depth of the fraud, which you don't think exists, or you do.
I didn't say it doesn't exist. I never said that's the other thing. I'm not saying there's no fraud. I'm saying you have to prove it.
Okay, there's the widespread, the great fraud that there's no evidence of, but it does exist.
The Kraken. Okay.
I want Trump to drain the swamp. And I don't think there's anyone better than him that can do that.
He didn't do it. He filled the swamp in. This is the problem with you Trumpers. You guys are delusional. You're delusional. He did not drain. He didn't even come close to draining. He pulled in all these Goldman Sachs guys, all of these Wall Street guys. He didn't end the tax loophole he said he's going to end, the carried over interest. He didn't do any of the stuff he said he was going to do on those matters.
Well,
anything pertaining to the swamp, he didn't do.
Well, wait a second. I have to disagree. He surely exposed it.
Oh, that is such a consolation prize.
You don't even let me finish.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's not a consolation. You think that I'm not saying he has to do it by himself, but he has the whole country, especially the conservatives, all fired up, now actually wanting to do something about it.
No. Absolutely not. All he's done, Trump talks to the Trumpers and the Trumpers talk to the Trumpers. And all you have is this little cadre of Trumpers that are sharing their little data between themselves, and they're all convinced that they've proven something, and they haven't proven anything because they're no longer talking to anyone else. This is why I'm insisting on the evidence. I actually want to persuade the people that would matter. Meaning, I don't mean important people. I mean, you have to persuade some significant portion of the other sides of the issue if you're going to accomplish anything. All the little Trumpers being in agreement that there's this terrible fraud that happened and the electoral system is so terrible and all these things, that is not going to accomplish anything. They do not have sufficient numbers or power to make a difference. You have to persuade other people.
We like the electoral system. The other side doesn't. And we're not a little cadre of Trumpers. We're 80 million.
80 million. 74 million to be precise. 74 million. Biden has the 80 million.
Yeah. He's trying to steal our votes. I don't know. I want you to look at Dr. Shiva's.
I'll look at it. I have looked at it, and it's been examined by a number of different people that offer very compelling arguments against it, with actual data being presented with it, as opposed to just conclusions. Okay. I'm not interested in graphs. I can draw any graph. I'm interested in seeing the actual data that produces the graphs. And so I lean towards anyone who provides me that. I find it very suspect when you have these people that say they're trying to give proof in the election, but they don't want to share their actual data. Why is that?
Well, I don't know about that. And if I were you on your side, you would just give a good alternate reason why they don't want to share it. Oh, yeah, yes, I agree. I think they should share it. I wish I were smarter and I could do it myself. You know, I would actually go in and investigate and tabulate the number, and I would know. I have to accept, you know, I believe that the Earth travels around the sun. I have no evidence for that, none. And no one that I've ever met has any evidence that the Earth travels around the sun.
But think about that analogy. If you had somebody saying that it was true and someone saying it wasn't true, and the guy that was saying it's true offered up all of this data, actual data from satellites, but not pictures, but actual data, numbers that you could put in if you were capable of. You could put it into into spreadsheets and into algorithms and things and analyze it. And the one saying it wasn't true gave you a picture and says, "See this picture? It's of my backyard. It proves that doesn't happen." Well, I'm going to lean towards the guy that's given me the tools to analyze it myself and come to conclusions myself. And if I can't, like for instance, Brett Weinstein, the guy I mentioned to you, he came out and put it on Twitter because he says, I'm a biologist. He's a PhD in biology. I do not have the mathematical skills yet to do it. I want someone who does. Someone comes out and says, I do, and he goes in and he says, this is why this is wrong. This is why this statistical analysis fails and it's not right and it should be debunked. And he says, and here are the spreadsheets where you can see how I did it. And anyone, maybe I can't take and look at it and come to a conclusion, but other mathematicians can. It's giving the data where the whole world publicly can look at it. And if there is some flaw in it, somebody will come out and say, no, you're rounding that number off. That's what happened.
Okay.
The data that they were talking about came down to rounding errors.
Okay. I would like to see what evidence you have that debunks Dr. Shiva's arguments.
Sure.
I haven't seen anything that debunks him, but I also haven't seen anything that debunks the guy, Bobby Piton, his statistical analysis, putting all the names in. I haven't seen that either. Anyone debunking him. I would like to see that.
Okay, I had not heard of Python, so I'll look into that. But Shiva, you should look up the guy called Stand Up Maths. He's doing a lot of videos on the analysis.
What's it called? Stand Up Math.
I think it's called Stand Up Math.
Okay.
I think that's what the YouTube channel is called.
Okay. Yep. Stand Up Maths.
Yep. He does a lot of those, and I know he's done some videos on Shiva, but I don't know which, because I think Shiva's actually put out quite a bit of different.
I looked at one of his videos, but maybe I'm not just very good at math, but I didn't like the one I saw of him. I just thought I also had doubts about it, but it's because my math skills aren't that great. Because he was arguing against the Benford's law.
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, maybe I can't remember what it was he said that I just thought, I don't know. I didn't really like Benford's law, proving fraud. That to me wasn't that persuasive. But the other guy, that Dr. Shiva, I thought was the most persuasive. I thought because he can actually reproduce the way the votes came in, but it does imply fraud.
Have you watched Scott Adams do you watch any of his stuff? You know who Scott Adams is? The guy who created Dilbert? You know the comic strip Dilbert, right?
Yes.
Okay, well the guy who draws Gilbert and created Gilbert, he does a daily podcast on Periscope and YouTube.
Okay.
Anyways, he's big time Trump supporter.
Okay.
And he goes through and that's where I get leads to a lot of the information I get is through him, because he very much would like to see. He believes there was probably fraud in the election, and yet to the date, I don't think that he's been able to confirm a single piece of it as evidence either.
But you mean enough to overturn the election?
Enough to say no. He's saying enough to say, yeah, that evidence is conclusive. That is evidence of fraud. It may not even be enough. Look, I'm not saying that has to be sufficient to overturn the election for it to be true. If you could prove to me conclusively that 10 votes in Maricopa County were fraudulent, I'd accept that. Okay, there's 10 votes that are fraud, no doubt. But I haven't found anyone to prove any fraud.
Well, wait. See, this is where you're killing me. Because I don't think it's controversial to say that when they come out and they've actually, like in Maricopa, the legislature said, yeah, we have 36,000 illegal voters registered. They know this. And this was the legislature saying, should I doubt that?
I'm not saying you should doubt that.
Okay. Well, let me just give you one last argument that I remember hearing that made sense to me, because most of these things, when I see these peculiar things that are going on, like in the middle of the night, the vote count stops, and then they come back and you get these spikes. I'm like, what's going on here? This is crazy. It doesn't make sense. And the one guy who I saw point out, he plotted on his graph. Yeah, he probably with his little Sharpie was putting these in the order he wanted him to. But the spike of votes for Biden, which were mail-in ballots, his argument was, this can't be. It seemed to me at the same time that came in was shortly after this truck driver who said he dropped his ballots off somewhere. They were taken out of the back of his truck. He said that the way these mail-in ballots work, he said when they go through the sorting machines, he says they're basically shuffled. He said when you see them coming in at night, you see a very random, homogeneous order, some for Trump, Biden, Trump, Biden, Trump, Biden. And when you see a large group come in, all Biden, he said, those didn't go through the sorting machines. He said that those weren't mailed in, was his argument. He said, that's not possible. He said, that's not the way the mail system works. He said, these votes could not have gone through the mail system, or it wouldn't have just, 140,000 Biden votes all at once.
Yeah, I've read explanations for those things that are quite compelling.
Well,
my point is that him saying it can't be isn't evidence. That's my point.
No,
but I'm not saying it's not true.
This is what I'm saying.
I'm not saying what he's saying is untrue. What I'm saying is that's not evidence. Everybody is offering these hearsay arguments.
It's evidence. It's statistically, it's very unlikely that
that's not evidence.
Well, wait a second.
The Boston Red Sox coming back from a 3-0 deficit and winning the World Series is statistically unlikely. It doesn't mean they committed fraud.
Yeah, but that's a little different. What I'm saying is, this is why I'm saying it's common sense. If you were in a card game and there was a shoe of 6 decks, and someone got ace, 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 ace. No, that can't happen. There's something going on. Now, someone will assign
that all may be true, but you cannot convict somebody just because they got 8 aces in a row. You'd have to have evidence that they did something.
Exactly. This is the difference between common. I'm not saying that this is the evidence in court. But I know, if I lived back in the Old West and this happened, well, it's too bad. We all know that there was cheating. Can we prove it? No, but we have enough evidence that you cheated, because statistically it cannot happen.
But what difference does that make? Again, this goes back to my point. The Trumpers are just this is why Trump was destined to lose, I think, and this is why, as long as the Trumpers are in charge of the party, they're going to lose. Because they're very self-satisfied that they figured out that there was fraud. They don't think they have to actually prove it. They don't think they have to do the hard work to actually prove the case and do the hard work to actually make it stick.
No, I don't know about that. I think they are, not everyone. Rudy Giuliani is doing a whole lot of hard work.
That's another thing. They got Rudy Giuliani in charge. This is typical Trump. He goes and gets himself Rudy Giuliani. That's who he's going to have. This worn out old horse. He's going to go have out there.
Now you don't like Rudy Giuliani.
I like Rudy Giuliani. If I was trying to prove election fraud, he would not be the face of election fraud. He just got caught with his pants down, literally, and he's the one. You're going to trot him out there. This tired old horse. It's only because of Nate. It's typical Trump. typical Trump thinking of getting this celebrity person because he's trying to drum up the base. He's not trying to actually win it. Now, I'm not saying he's trying to lose it. I'm just saying his view is I can do this by getting all these people riled up. And he can't. He cannot accomplish it that way. Wow. The Democrats know this. They do not have big names doing this stuff for them. They have people who are very, very good at playing dirty. If the fraud happened the way it appears it did, which I will grant that it appears it did, it did not happen because they got some celebrity old warhorse out there to be the face of the campaign. It's because they have hundreds of thousands of operatives that you'll never know who they are that are extremely good at playing dirty. And my fear of all of this, whether there was fraud or not, is that the other side is going to realize, just like they did with gerrymandering, that the only way to win is to play just as dirty as the other side. And what is it going to look like when in 2024 we're counting 500 million votes in a country with 300 million people? I mean, then where does that end?
Well, I don't know where it ends, but if Trump leaves office, I think, I guess it comes down to Georgia. If it goes Democrat, I think we're all in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And it'll be interesting to see what that happens. Just Albert's offended at me, I think, that I'm criticizing Giuliani. I think Giuliani was great in his day. We're not in his day. You cannot criticize Biden for being too old for president and not criticize Giuliani for being too old to come in and play lawyer on TV. Trump needed a real legal team, not a celebrity legal team. Not Dershowitz, not Giuliani. He needed a real legal team. And he needed them there 2 years ago, not on the eve of the election. That was way too late. Everyone told him that. And this is coming from someone who voted for Trump and wanted Trump to win and thinks that it's very bad for the country that he didn't win.
Okay, well, we agree. Okay.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I wish you would have brought. I thought you were going to bring evidence. This is what I find with the Trumpers. Lots of accusations and no evidence.
Well, your standard of evidence is just it was put that that's not fair. That's a cheap shot.
It is a cheap shot.
That's a cheap shot.
I got this just for you.
Wow. There. You got that right.
Mine has that printed on the back, too.
All right. It was good talking to you.
And likewise. It was good talking to you. I appreciate you coming in.
Now, wait a second.
What's up?
I actually wasn't as well prepared as I wanted to be, but I wanted to talk to you quickly because I know that after the 6th, when the country is just – when Trump actually plays his Trump card.
His Trump card. When the Kraken is finally released, are we releasing the Kraken on the 6th? That's what I want to know.
When on the 6th, something big is going to happen.
something big is going to happen. Okay.
All right.
All right.
And then you're going to come around and you're going to be shocked. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was China. It was Russia. Yeah.
Let me tell you what I think. Like I said, let me just reiterate. I think that there was enormous amount of fraud in this election. I think that it is basically conclusively proven that the Democrats across the board, not some top-down conspiracy, but Democrats across the board conspired to intimidate Trump voters, as particularly white men who felt responsible for the well-being of their families and their families' future, to not vote for Trump, to willingly, voluntarily not vote for Trump, and that through the election. Because 5%, Trump picked up in every demographic, including women. He did better in every demographic, including women. Not with white males. He lost 5% of white males.
White males were intimidated in what sense?
They did not, because the same way I consider not voting for Trump.
Okay.
In that I do not want to deal with the unrest in this country. And I'm not blaming Trump for it. I'm not blaming Trump for it, and I'm not convinced that Trump not winning will change that. But I am convinced that Trump winning will make it more, I
think there will be more unrest.
There might be. That's not the point.
If Trump wins, there's going to be greater unrest. But if Trump doesn't win, things will probably calm down. And then it'll be worse later on.
It may be. There's no way. I'm not telling you that these 5% of white men who didn't vote for Trump, that voted for him in 2018, I'm not telling you they're right. I'm not telling you that their risk assessment is proper or accurate. I'm just saying I believe there was a risk assessment made. A conclusion was made that they did not want to deal with it. Sure, I have a gun and I can go out, and if they intimidate my family, I can shoot someone. And then I can spend the rest of my life in jail, most likely. Do I want to deal with that? That's the assessment. And I think that 5% of white men decided they didn't want to deal with it. It just wasn't worth it.
Okay.
And I think that's fraudulent. I think that is provable fraud, but I don't think it changes a single vote, even though it changed the election. And I think there's other things like that likewise. I said a long time ago, before the election ever happened, I put a post out that Trump was committing serial seppuku. The Japanese ritual disembowelment. Yeah.
I saw Shogun.
There you go. Ronin. That was the one I got it from. The Robert De Niro movie, Ronin. But anyways, that's what I said this long ago. Trump was making a lot of really stupid mistakes, in my opinion, that were going to cost him the election. He did exactly what Romney did, just in a different way. All right. Albert Silva says Kamala Harris hasn't given up her seat. Why not? Because that's standard. Who was it that was a senator? Dan Quayle, maybe, and other Republicans who were senators or congressmen when they were elected for vice president didn't give up their seat to the day that they were inaugurated. That's very typical. There's nothing. It's not because she thinks she's not going to get. That they're not going to win. Now, she may not. They may be afraid. I don't know. But it is very typical for a sitting senator or congressman who has won election to a higher office to not give up their seat until the day of, especially when they're in a state like California, that there's no doubt that it'll be a Democrat that'll be put into the place. I mean, it's not like she's worried that they need to, go out and campaign for a long period of time in order to not lose the seat for the party. Kamala has no fear. I mean, the next day they'll have a Democrat sitting there. So there's no reason for her to give up her seat. Same reason why you don't give up your job when you get a promotion a week out.
All right. Same reason you don't give your 2 weeks notice.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being on, Bret. I will talk to you later.
Much.
All right. Okay. When you get some evidence, give me a call. We'll get you back on with some real evidence. Okay. Thanks for being with us, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for being with us, everybody. This is Freeborn Podcast. First episode of 2021. All you who are superstitious and think that a random day picked out of the calendar year is going to make a difference and you're going to have a better year going forward, I hope you are right. And I will talk to you later.